Today's Black History Moment features information from the following sources: the Library of Congress, the Library Company of Philadelphia, and the University of South Carolina. For more information on their contributions, please see the description box below. Welcome to today's Black History Minute. Today we will be talking about the history of immigration and Black educators from Reconstruction to ML. Now, one of the things I want to highlight is this particular picture. Taken in June of 1925, this is a gathering of the South Carolina Palmetto Teachers Association. During the era of colonial and revolutionary periods, Blacks of all kinds organized themselves in order to fight back against the oppression in their communities. In 1759, Anthony Benzuet, a hands-on abolitionist active in the learning community of Philadelphia, began his school for Philadelphia Blacks. The world's first anti-slavery society was founded in 1775. The society became a major force in local Black political affairs, establishing schools, arranging indentures for freed slaves, providing legal defense for Blacks, and defending fugitive slaves. Although the United States officially abolished the transatlantic slave trade on January 1st, 1808, this only helped the slaveholders and their interests by making their chattel slavery even more valuable. In 1816, Bethel became the first church organized as the African Methodist Episcopal Church. In 1787, Prince Hall established the first African American Masonic Lodge. A former slave named Henry Bibb recounts his suffering and escapes and recaptures in unsuccessful attempts to free his family. Bibb lectured for the Liberty Party in Ohio and Michigan during the 1940s and fled to Canada after the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, as did thousands of others of fugitives. In response to the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, the National Convention movement among free persons of color provided an independent arena where their interests could be defined and their strategies could be developed for improvement. Even in 1834, David Ruggles, best known for his work with the Underground Railroad and the New York Vigilance Committee, organized to protect fugitive slaves and prevent the kidnapping of free Blacks to sell them back into the slavery. Throughout the entire period following the American Revolution, African Americans were instrumental in freeing themselves from the bondages of slavery. Their organizations, their institutions, their activism ultimately led to the collapse of the institution. And during the period of Reconstruction, Blacks, both freed and enslaved, were able to experience a new level of prosperity, which leads us to our little known Black history figure for today, Celia Dow Dixon of South Carolina. Mrs. Dixon was a part of the first graduating class at the University of South Carolina following the land grant college creations during the Reconstruction period. These 8 women were the first graduating class. Despite having been born during slavery and ultimately experiencing emancipation, these women understood the value of education. So when the General Assembly in 1873 opened the campus, she started her career at Columbia's Howard School. There she would marry in 1890. And although under the burden of Jim Crow, her commitment to equality never wavered. During her 57-year career, she taught generations of African American students. Ms. Dodd was also active in a number of national organizations, including the Women's Club Movement, the Palmetto Teachers Association, and the South Carolina Federation of Colored Women's Clubs. Throughout the Reconstruction era, free Blacks and those who were formerly enslaved organized countless organizations and institutions in order to advocate for their freedom and for their rights and their place in civil society. Those who fought this fight are often forgotten to history, but their contributions allow for many of the achievements and the privileges that our current people enjoy. Although she was enslaved just a block from the university, she taught mostly at Howard School in Booker T. Washington, two of the city's black schools during segregation. In her 57-year career, she only missed 3 days of work. She died of a heart attack in 1935, only one day after grading papers and teaching her kids. The level of dedication those who were newly freed during the Reconstruction period and the organizations that they founded to advance the ideas and principles of those who were at the bottom of the societal tier can never be forgotten. So, not only do we highlight their commitment and their accomplishments during this Black History Month, we also want to continue to shine a spotlight on the information that we don't always remember. The rest of the episode will feature information from the following sources. I want to give a very special shout out to Karen Hunter, the Sirius XM family, and Dr. Greg Carr of the Black Star Network. As a part of the Nubia family, the Hub News, the Karen Hunter Show, and the space that she has created called Knarrative has become a digital repository for unknown works, facts, and stories con- related to those who are African American in this country. So we're going to take a look at the Black Teachers Associations and how those organizations specifically advanced their ideas and interests in helping Black students. So if you have not had a chance to subscribe to the following channels, please do so at this time. The links will be in the description below.
The problem in our school system is that we don't have enough people who are teaching our children who love our children.
That's right.
You know, they're doing it as a service or a duty or as a paycheck, but they're not coming in there out of love. In every space where we have teachers who do not have that spirit of love in the classroom, our children will fail.
So this particular episode was done almost 2 years ago, and it highlights the contributions of the Black Teachers Associations. During the pre-Civil War period and during the Reconstruction era, Black people all across the South and in the North created organizations to help educate those newly and freed people. Although during the pre-Civil War period, education for enslaved people was specifically outlawed. Once the Civil War ended, those people understood that both education and civic participation by engaging in the vote was an incredibly important part of them gaining access to the liberties that they so rightly deserve to enjoy. So we're going to go through what the Black Teachers Associations were like, and more importantly, we're going to talk about how Dr. Martin Luther King specifically played a role in advocating for those teachers in the education of our youth. I am eternally grateful for Professors Hunter and Dr. Carr for the hard work that they have done over the last 3 years of creating the space that they call In Class with Carr. It is an invaluable resource. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please stop by their YouTube channel.
The American Teachers Association, the Black organization that has its roots in the 19th century, coming out of enslavement.
That's the 1800s.
But that integration, this is just after Brown versus Board of Education, will lead to the undermining of the type of values that you just described, Professor Hunter, that I see coming up in the chat that I experienced myself in terms of Black teachers who cared and loved for us and who could, with a look or with a word, get us back in the line when we were being what children are, children.
One of the things that we have found is that during the period after Brown versus Board of Education, with the closing of many of the African American schools and the integration into the predominantly white schools, it wasn't just the students that were affected. The teachers themselves were actually affected. And one of the ways that they were affected, not only by losing their job, they lost their ability to be able to connect with those students who needed that particular connection, that cultural connection from them. But that was not the intent of integration. And so, any one of these New Age scholars telling you that the people, the elders, and the ancestors of the past sold out the children, sold out our community, sold out our institutions, have not taken a chance of actually examining the words and the actions of the people at that time. Because the Black Teachers Association was not going to allow that to happen without a fight, and they were fully aware of what would come next.
And as you all have seen many times, I have the histories, because one of the things that the American Teachers Association, when they merged with the National Education Association, they told them one of the conditions was that we have to write the histories. We have to write the histories of our association. And this is the various state histories: Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, North Carolina, the Palmetto Association out of South Carolina. Remember we talked about it with Mike Harriet one time. Let's start with the history of the American Teachers Association. This is Thelma Perry, Professor Thelma Perry.
And so he's going to take you through what happens with the NEA merger. Now, as you know, with many of the organizations, whether it was the American Medical Association, the Bar Association, the National Teachers Associations, all of those associations were segregated. So during the 1950s and 1960s, when a lot of these organizations would merge, including your sports organizations, one of the things that they did, specifically in this case, was to make sure that they wrote down all of the many strategies, the many accomplishments, the many milestones that were achieved in those spaces, because had they not, the people that they were merging with were not interested in preserving those histories. If you're of a certain age and you know anything about checking out books, you know what that means. You know exactly what that library card means. And the fact that this book of that importance has sat somewhere in a library at the University of Washington, as he's going to share, just goes to show that even in spaces where we're supposed to be furthering and advancing the idea and the space of learning, that just certain stories are simply not valued.
Right. Now watch this. In the library at Eastern Washington, look where the subdivision was. It was property of the Black Education Program.
So again, oftentimes our history is written, yet it is hidden. And one of the reasons why so many educators in the last few years have fought so hard against the attempts to destroy public education, and specifically the contributions of African Americans to American society, is because we understand that even when our history is written, when our bodies are cataloged like chattel, when our bodies are hung from trees and pictures are taken and postcards are sent, that if we do not tell the story accurately, then those who come along and tell it will tell it in a way that does us no good. If you are enjoying the content that you are seeing right now, please consider again going and linking to the full clips. The episode is about 2 hours long. It is full of invaluable information that you are not going to find anywhere else. Again, eternal gratitude to Professor Carr, to the Karen Hunter Show, and to Knarrative for creating such a wonderful repository of Black history for us.
She taught an associate professorial lecturer at George Washington University. She was a member of the District of Columbia Bar. She had a JD.
These are high school teachers, but they valued education so much, and they understood that it wasn't just about educating the kids, it was also about understanding their role in the civic and civil society, that they had to be just more than one thing, that this was the person who led the Teachers Association.
Taught in North Carolina, in Oklahoma. She taught at Johnson C. Smith. That was her first professional position. South of the states, South Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, Arkansas. I mean, you name it, all the southern states, right? Texas. Brother Potts writes about the Palmetto, which is South Carolina's Black Teachers Association.
And
And
your
mind you,
skills, your
they made the
job satisfaction
NEA
also.
pay for the histories. That was part of the merger deal. We're not merging with y'all and lose our history. We know how y'all are. Y'all have us in here, and the only history you'll have, these remarkable Negroes came and joined us. They had on nice suits and dresses, and they're very respected. Let's go to the Palmetto. This is South Carolina. My man Potts.
These are the dedications that are found at the front of the book. So if you know anything about publishing, the dedication is usually a very personal statement by either the author or the editors of the book. And this is what the Black educators, as they're merging with the NEA, knowing that they are experiencing what they're experiencing doing Brown versus Board of Education. They've already experienced the last year, which he's going to talk about. And this is the dedication in the books that they finally get published.
John Potts said to the founders and former members of the Palmetto Education Association who did so much with so little for so many. May we always remember their unselfish and devoted services to the teaching profession and to the progress and development of the people of South Carolina.
So we often hear that the past ancestors and our activists, that when they advocated for integration, that they were not forceful, they didn't understand that they were integrating us into a burning house, that they abdicated their power by advocating for integration. That is not historical. That is not accurate. And they can speak for themselves. And Martin Luther King gets a lot of the vitriol and the pejorative statements in this particular area. But Martin Luther King was very clear. And if you really want to begin to understand the legacy, the real legacy, not the one that we get every January 15th, start at the end with Community and Chaos. Short read, simple book, but it really does lay out the next steps and what the Poor People's Campaign and how he found himself in Memphis was really about. And this is him speaking to the Black Teachers Association in Georgia.
Integrationist, hold on. This is what he says. He was vintage Reverend King on that evening as he began his talk. His voice gradually ascending to the elevated, punctuated staccato phrasing recognized the world over. It's 1967. He's in Atlanta, speaking to the Georgia Teachers and Educators Association. But the message Reverend King delivered about Black education and Black educators was a message America missed. By that meaning the social structure. That's what really Vanessa Siddle Walker is saying. He and other Blacks were done with segregation. Henceforth and forevermore, Reverend King proclaimed to the audience.
There was never going to be a way for Black people to be separate but equal in a settler colonial project on stolen land. The only way that there was ever going to be the kind of financial and social and civic achievements that liberty can secure was if the structures that of systemic racism were completely dismantled and destroyed.
The Black educators, no one among them wanted to return to second-class citizenship. However, Reverend King continued, repeating the words these educators had heard Dr. Horace Tate, who was the president of the GTEA. Dr. Tate had been saying, Reverend King says something Dr. Tate had been saying numerous times at state and regional meetings: integration must be two-way, a genuine integration. Here's the quote from King. Quote, integration doesn't mean the liquidation of everything started and developed by Negroes, King went on. The audience applauded. King says, now there are too many Americans, Reverend King enunciated emphatically. Whites and Negroes who think of integration merely in aesthetic and romantic terms, while you just add a little color to a still predominantly white-controlled power structure. You sound like George Jackson. All right, hold on. We must see, this is Dr. King, we must see integration in political terms where there is shared power, and I am not one that will integrate myself out of power.
Period. That's Dr. King. I will not integrate myself out of power. Those are the kinds of speeches he was making in late 1967 before April 4th, 1968. I think it is important to always allow people to tell their stories in their own words. I don't think we should speak for other people, and I definitely don't think we should speak for the
King goes
dead.
on and says, we have got to see that integration is genuine integration, where
Genuine integration. That's king.
there is shared power. Reverend King
It was never about placating or becoming subservient in any way. That was never the message of King.
knew that educators confronted just such a crisis in school integration, and they were calling for equality in myriad domains of school integration with all their might. He understood that black educators were at that very moment being forced to pay the penalty for their decades of seeking equality of opportunity for black children. Finally, Dr. King says, quote, I think you are on sound ground in saying that this integration process must not mean Negro annihilation. And it is just as important to have Negro principals at formerly all white schools as it is to have white principals at formerly all Negro schools. I want to stress this point because it's very important. Integration must lead us to a point where we share in the power that all of our society will produce.
It was about shared power. It was never about just coming into a space. The legacy of Dr. King has been weakened by those who would have us believe a myth over the truth. His speeches fill dictionary sized volumes. We do not have to distill it down to two sentences from a speech in 1963, which we always forget that that was spurred on by the loss of Medgar Evers.
Raising is this. The what they found out in integration, and this is what happened. This is what Vanessa Walker's book and many others track. When they merged and integrated, the best black teachers were cherry picked and taken to white spaces. Many of the other black teachers who were also good were taken and dismissed. They lost their careers. In places like Arkansas and Virginia, they literally closed schools for a year.
I need you to hear that. They closed schools for an entire year. The lost year in the private academies. You know, we have some political candidates going around right now talking about how proud they are of their Southern lineage and heritage and how their experiences here in the 1960s and 70s in America is proof that our country has made so much progress. That very high school that educated that personal political candidate is a direct result of what black children lost and what in response to our attempt to integrate into power, not into just a placated state of passivism, but into power at every turn. The dominant social structure has devised a new way to be exploitative and harmful.
And white people opened private schools, sent their children to school for no disruption in education, while black children had no choice because they had shut the schools down. If they could scramble and put something together, they tried, but they call it the lost year in Arkansas. In 1958, they closed all the schools in Arkansas. That meant that Horace Mann was closed. That's the school that Little Rock 9 came from, that in Dunbar. All them schools was closed. Well, then, so white people lost too. We all suffered. You know, white people started academies. And then y'all laid in wait in the social structure for decades until you could figure out a way to siphon my tax money into those private schools.
So, again, I want to thank Professor Hunter for creating this space with Dr. Carr. If you have not had a chance to enjoy the content of In Class with Carr, I again highly recommend you during this Black History Month or taking some time out once a week for the rest of the year to actually get the facts about the real history of our educators, our activists, our experiences in being agents of our own freedom. So that's our Black History moment for today, February 12th, 2024. This one was a little bit longer, but I do thank the Library of Congress, the Library Company of Philadelphia, the University of South Carolina, the Carol Hunter Show, Dr. Craig Carr, and In Class with Carr for all their contributions to today's episode. And as always, stay safe and remember the community needs you.